I would say that whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and especially with IBC, conceptualize it as an equity storage vehicle that will grow tax-free. It'll provide for your family long term, and just think about where you're trying to get to, and how would the equity growth in something like infinite banking, implementing this process diligently and consistently, and then seeing this grow over time, how would that potentially get you to where you want to be?
Today we're joined by Michael Traher. Mike has an incredible story about his journey with infinite banking, and I know you're going to find this conversation inspiring and packed with insight.
But before we begin, let's start it off like we do with all guest interviews. It's going to be 2 truths and a lie. So to keep count, Jason's up 1, I'm down 0. So this is our second interview. Hopefully I can tie it in for this one. So give us 2 truths and a lie, Michael. We'll try to figure out which one's the truth.
All right, here it goes. The first statement is I formed a company in 2018 with 10,000 and grew it to roughly 280,000 gross annual sales in less than 3 years. The second statement is I have a bachelor's degree. And the third is I was born in Nashville, Tennessee.
Since you say Jeremy, I'm going to go with the first and the third are truths. The second one was a lie.
I'm going to go with I was looking at Michael there, trying to read body language, trying to cheat a little bit, trying to use what I know about communication. I'm going to go, when I listened to it, for whatever reason, I thought instantly, number 1 is definitely true because he's proud of it. I heard some pride there. Number 2, he didn't have much energy around it. So I'm going to say that is not true. And I'm going to say number 3, it sounds like I'm actually, to keep it fun, Jeremy, so someone can win and someone can lose, so we don't have a tie. I'm going to say number 3 is he was not born in Nashville. So
you don't have to give me a pity point, okay? Like if it doesn't have to go that way.
Well, I mean, you're my partner, man. I want you to feel good about yourself. I don't want to win all the time. Walk us through the 2 truths and a lie.
Okay. All right. So it is true that I formed a company with $10,000 and in 2018, and I grew it before the end of 2020 to just about 280,000 in sales. That company is what provided a lot of the insight for what I'm about to share today. But that's true. So I actually did that according to the books. And the second one, I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, is also true. So I was born in Nashville, Tennessee. The one that's not true, even though I have 2 degrees, I have an AS and an AA. And I took a lot of education toward engineering, but I have not finished a bachelor's degree.
All right. So we are 1-1. Jason.
1-1. We're all tied up. So that means next time I'm not going to be so nice, Jeremy. I probably won't let you win.
I'm just going to let you know, I'm never pulling punches. You're never going to get any point for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's jump in this. Like, I met Michael just give a little backstory before we jump in. I met Michael a few years ago, and he had to have a lot of courage, which we're going to get into. And this is why we had Michael on, because he had a tough choice, Jeremy. And, I don't want to give too much context, but he had a tough choice to make. And he was really on a razor's edge. And one way he was going to go one way, and one way he could go the other way. And both would have completely different outcomes for his future. So that's why I thought this would be a fun story to share with everyone.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So, Michael, let's dive in. How did you hear about the infinite banking concept and what drew you to it?
So being a kind of an entrepreneur, and, it's almost like the internet knows what you want to see. They're like, oh, hey, we're sending you this. YouTube's like, yeah, you'll like these videos. It's cool, but it's also a little freaky. But YouTube sent me this guy, maybe it's well known to the folks who might be watching this, but Garrett Gunderson, he did a lot of, financial type, videos. He's very much a business oriented guy, but in his videos, he would talk about this thing. Oh yeah. Well, that's one of his books right there. What would the Rockefellers do? Yeah. So he would talk about this concept, like what would the Rockefellers do? And, about this machine that he would use to invest in businesses. And And, I'm sitting there, a tight financial spot, trying to figure out, like here I took action. I started several businesses. This was the second business that I'd ever started. And it just didn't, I mean, it went seemingly well, and then it started to kind of collapse on me. And, I did a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong. And, so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, this would have really helped, if I had had something like it sounded like what he was talking about. I just didn't quite understand it yet. And so for maybe a year, I had this idea of what this thing was in my head. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go ahead and start actually researching this thing he calls cash flow banking. So I type it in online. I go on Google, I start searching cash flow banking. I see the term infinite banking. I'm like, what is this? Infinite banking, cash flow. Oh, this sounds like the same thing he was talking about. And so I find infinite banking and I start searching pros and cons because, I like to be as detailed as possible. So, I like to be diligent, do my research. So I'm looking up what are the pros of this kind of strategy? What are the cons of this, type of strategy? And so, meanwhile, I'm in debt. I'm facing this decision of, do I file for bankruptcy? Do I not? Like this is either the business has collapsed. I'm basically trying to figure out a way to continue.
As I'm listening to this, I'm very keenly aware that you had a problem. You had a problem and you're looking for a solution. Okay. So what was the feeling of when you started, when like that light bulb clicked, right? Because Jeremy and I talk about this all the time, and Nelson talked about it, that this isn't taught, it's caught. So I heard you catching something, and I wanted to just ask, what was the feeling when you went from disbelief to belief?
Well, so the way I would describe it, I mean, it's like an epiphany. Before you understand a concept and after it, it's like you were in such a fog, you couldn't really explain it. And then all of a sudden you understood it. It's like it not being able to see to being able to see. Like I think in the Bible, it talks about, going from death to life, you don't understand and then you understand, and, through faith that opens up your eyes. And this one's a little bit more of it was an epiphany on how to manage your money that just made so much sense that it was like, how did I not know this before? Like this was something that, it was kind of, like I said, it's going from blind to sight, almost, but in a different way.
What was the financial problem or the situation that you were in that you were trying to solve?
When my business started failing, the business that seemed like it was going so well because I was growing revenues so quickly, it left me in a situation where I was over 60,000 in debt. And so this is why I was considering bankruptcy. And so I ended up 60,000 in debt, looking at, okay, I'm actually having to, because my business isn't producing a cash flow, I was having to put my personal expenses on credit cards, having, credit card payments, just sucking money out of my bank account constantly. I eventually had to stop paying the credit cards. And so I was in this really painful financial position. And so that kind of drove me to action to figure out, is there a way? Because I was starting a real estate business at the end of 2020 because of the failure of this other business. And I thought, let me parlay my efforts and the little bit of cash that I have still in the accounts to, a better business. And so while I was trying to do that, there was also this mental block. There was a psychological weight that was on me. Like I know that if I just produce, I could pay back these debt, but the psychological block was, if I produce, the very first thing that's going to happen to my efforts is the money is going to go to my creditors, the people that I owe money to. And so for some reason, I just couldn't get past that. It was keeping me from action or the right actions at the right time.
So how does IVC, interjecting IVC into that, for starters, tell us how hard it was to do it, and then how that solved your immediate cash flow issue?
Yeah. So for me, it was super easy, but I know that that's not how it goes for everybody. But once I figured out what the concept was, how I could manage my money better and the benefits that it provided for control of cash and then also uninterrupted compounding interest, I realized if I produce and I push the cash into this system, this machine, then that will preserve my efforts in my business and otherwise. It'll preserve my efforts in a way that even if I have to pay back my creditors, I'm still producing something with the capital that I'm putting away. And so that made the decision for me.
And
Like
you keep
it
talking about
literally,
production, Michael. I mean, to jump in, like you keep talking about production. You said that word 4 times, 5 times in the last 30 seconds, right? And
yeah.
so you figure, and I want to point to the action because it's like we talk about knowledge is power. If you ask some people, but Jeremy and I both believe the same thing that without action, knowledge isn't powerful. And so
Yeah.
you're talking about you understood the first problem. I have to go produce more money. We live in America and it's a capitalist society, whatever you think of it. But the first job that we have when it comes to infinite banking is the job of making money. Now you found a new way to make money. And then you start asking yourself, what do I need to do with the money and how do I handle the debt that I have? And your two choices were A, do what a lot of folks do and file bankruptcy. And if you've had a bankruptcy, it happens, right? Like we get to a point, but you were catapulted. What I'm hearing you share, you were catapulted from being in a place of fear and worry and anxiety to the point where you were in inaction. So when you started asking yourself a different question, and then you realized now I know where I'm going. So taking action has some meaning. Like
Yeah.
further that thought for us. Like what's there when I'm asking that or stating that for you?
Yeah, action. It's funny. I've believed in action since there was this would be a long story, maybe for another day, but there was a car accident that I was in when I was 25, and that actually prompted several actions that in my life. And what preceded every action was pain. And when I look back through my life and I think if I can manage this idea of pain the proper way and say, okay, well then if I want to improve my situation, then if I just take the right actions at the right times, I can certainly do it. And so that's kind of where I'm at and that's where I was at with right before the infinite banking. I was in tremendous pain. I hated the idea of bankruptcy. I said, I'm not that guy. Like I pay my debts back. Like I'm responsible. Like I've always been disciplined with my money. I was able to save over $40,000 in my 20s on a salary that was less than 35,000 a year. And so, I'm like, I've always been the guy that's just like, no, I pay my debts. I do this the right way. And then I was in a position where it was like, well, I can't pay my debts, and I need to take a different action, a different approach. And infinite banking became part of that approach for me. It was kind of the mechanism that gave me the foundation I needed to continue to build on the action I already took.
Yeah, how's your mindset kind of shifted? It sounds like you had the epiphany moment that created the action. You implemented IBC into your financial situation that took you away from bankruptcy and towards a life of wealth and financial stability. So tell us a little bit more about what other opportunities you've had since implementing IBC.
So I've been able to pay off a portion of the debt that I was in and, much more easily because I was able to, preserve that capital. And then of course it gets you in the mindset of instead of trying to produce enough to live, it's okay, how do I store my money in the most efficient way? And so I suppose the mindset shift was now I feel like my money is in a vehicle that it's not going to be suddenly eroded. And so like my mind was very much, how do I prevent, this bleeding of cash that's happening? And how do I preserve my economic energy in a way? And now my mind is like, okay, if I can put as much economic energy into this thing, then I can pull it back out productively, and then I can improve my life and the people whose lives I care about as well, like anyone around me. So my mindset is more on an abundance mindset than it was a scarcity mindset, which is before. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, we talk about IBC being a process, right? It's not a product. It's a baking
Okay.
process. Absolutely. So, it clicks for me. We just want to be able to communicate that same message to a lot of the listeners that are out there, and how we can give you, like I tell folks all the time, I can give you a fighter jet, but if you don't know how to take off and land, what good is it?
Yeah.
And you do the tremendous amount of courage that Mike has. Like, I'm so, like, anyone listening to this, they can feel your faith, your certainty in what you're doing now, but the courage it took to get there. Like, that's it's hard for people to be honest with themselves where they're at financially, because we're looking around, we're comparing ourselves to the Jones or whoever those folks are, right? To our friends, to the people in our life, to our parents, to whoever, and we want to look successful. Like our ego says, I'm a man. I want to look successful. I want to be excited about what's happening, but underneath that pain, that fear, that anxiety, like it eats at a lot of people. Like, we're in a place financially in our country where I believe that the majority of people feel the way that you're sharing, where it takes a lot of courage to come on and talk about it live, like to talk about, hey, I was in pain. Like, I can feel your pain, man. I can feel it through this platform, and I know the audience can hear it. And so the amount of courage it takes to really weigh in and look where you're at and realize what I'm doing is not working, and I need to go ask different questions. And that brought you to IBC. It brought you to the conversation with me. It brought you to, being able to meet you in person and invite you on to here. And so talk more about, maybe what it felt like to be, because you said something like you want to provide for those around you. You want to create something that's amazing. So you're thinking about creation, or you're thinking about, okay, how do I survive? How do I preserve things? And, like, talk about the transition from going from that survival, like, how do I even make it through this, to now looking for additional things that you're going to create from. Like, how are you going to bring this forward? Like, what does legacy in this mean to you?
Yeah. So what's really cool about this is, having studied money itself and learned so much in the last four years, and including the last two that I've been familiar with infinite banking, and of course through the conversation with you and setting up the policy, like it gives me this outlook of this machine that I'm operating, this money machine or this money process, is going to provide a tremendous blessing to, I'm not married yet. I would like to be. I'd like to have a family. But, let's say, Lord willing, I have that family. I can see how it'd be really good for them to have something like this to start with. If I can wrap around it the right principles, the right values, and maybe gate it in a way that makes them have to work a little bit to get there. Like, I don't want it to be as hard for my family, my future family, as it was for me. But of course, that's part of building a legacy. But I want it to be a little bit like, and I've heard people, say you can use a trust, you could have the policy pay the trust. But either way, it's given me this, okay, I can build into other people's knowledge, here's how not to make the same mistake I did. Here's how to manage the money in a way that you don't end up where I was at. And also, here's how you stay healthy, like, things like that. I'm starting to think about, different things other than how am I going to get my next, enough money to pay the next paycheck or the next set of bills and stuff.
Have you been able to, since changing your mindset and thinking more like a banker, do you now see more opportunity in life that you may not have seen before when you're operating under that scarcity mindset, and now you have this mindset of abundance? Do you not see a difference in, like, just daily life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So basically, I'm looking for opportunities to lend the money that I have. Of course, that I realize that comes with tremendous wisdom. You have to be very diligent about who you lend to. And so what I've thought about is, well, okay, let me lend to myself first, my own business, pay myself the interest. And then my business, as it produces and it grows, I earn more and more interest. And so it'll be kind of a spiraling up, if you will. And so I start thinking about that, and I think about in a more abundant way. If I'm trying to remember the question you asked, if I kind of
Recognizing opportunities where, before you might have walked past an opportunity, not recognizing that the door is open down that hallway of life, and just recognizing how many doors are truly open to you when you start opening up your mind to abundance.
yeah, it's definitely, yeah, I've had opportunities present themselves to me that I would have just passed up before. And I've said, wait, I have this machine that, I can use you know, to invest in this thing that's going to benefit me moving forward. And I wasn't thinking like that before. And so, yeah, that's definitely opened up multiple opportunities to say, I can do this, and this is going to actually benefit me in my productive life or my business life or even my, personal relationships, like, things like that. So, and then, if I want to enjoy myself, I take some time to enjoy myself. I buy somebody a meal or something like that. So I will do more of that now than I did before. So it's definitely, it's been a blessing for sure. And it's definitely, the mindset shift is just awesome. And that's what it allows.
And Michael, how old are you?
I'm 36, almost
36.
almost 37.
All right. Yeah. The reason I'm asking is, we look at kind of the average age of when people start getting into this, and you have to kind of get through a lot of those misconceptions out there, figure it out the hard way on your own. And it's not, we find like typically in the mid 30s, going on to early 40s is when folks realize that traditional advice just hasn't worked out. And you're right there, just like everyone else that's fighting IBC. You're right there in that same age group. So coming across, I'm noticing a pattern is the reason I asked.
Yeah.
Michael is younger than most, right? Most of the people into our late 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And so the fact that like Michael looks like he can still be like in his 20s, right? He looks super young. I was actually trying to remember how old you were. So I'm glad you asked, Jeremy. I've actually been thinking about that for probably 15 minutes now. So, because I want the listeners, if you can't see Michael, I want you to understand like his journey is, our journeys are all the same. And it just depends on when we're ready for the information, when we're ready to start asking different questions. And Michael, you said something a second ago, like you're talking about like how it affects you in your personal life. Like, would you go a little deeper there? Like, what do you mean it affects you in your personal life now that you have more of an abundant feeling around, having this structure? You keep calling it the machine.
Oh yeah. Yes. The machine. I view it as like my personal banking business. Oddly enough, I had a girl ask me out on a date, which, totally doesn't happen to guys ever. But
never happened to Jeremy. Just keep going.
So anyway, so I was asked out on a date, which is totally like, it's even for a guy like me who I have had, to say no to plenty of girls that like me or, were interested, but it not usual that they do that. So I was able to take her on a date, and pay for her meal, even though she asked me. She's like, wait, like it was kind of like I asked you, so I don't really, you don't have to pay for me. And I was like, no, I got it, And so, it didn't go past the date, but it was a good feeling being able to say, okay, well, I've got, I've got this bank that I'm building and paying for a date, even if I have a friend and it's like, hey, I want to spend some time, I can like, hey, you want to go to such and such restaurant and, just chat, how's life, etc. Yeah, it opens up more of those opportunities. And I aim to continue more and more of those types of, like if I see a gift that I think somebody will appreciate, maybe pick that up too. And so, more and more of that as I continue to produce and then recapture more of what I'm putting back out and then pulling back in.
I love that you share that, because so many people think that IBC is only for the wealthy, right? This is only a rich person's thing. And I didn't grow up wealthy. I remember growing up where we would go through a fast food restaurant drive-through, right? And that would be a massive treat for us. Like, just think about that. The idea of going through a McDonald's and getting some chicken nuggets and an orange soda, or as I called it growing up, a meat cheese. I was a hefty little boy, a double cheeseburger. But that was like a big treat. And for some people that are out there, that could be an expense, like a significant expense. It doesn't matter where you begin on your financial journey. The most important thing is that you start, right? This is for everybody. This is not just reserved for the wealthy. This is reserved for everybody who wants to start getting their financial lives in order. And even if it's as simple as taking someone out on a date, buying a small gift, a token of appreciation, being able to do something that before, when you're in that scarcity mindset, right? You were there and it's like, this is my money. Like, don't touch it. I'm here. I have it. And you realize, no, I'm living a life of abundance and I'm here to live it with other people. I'm here to get out and about and experience the world and enjoy this. Like, it doesn't have to be scarcity. So I like that you share that, because it gets over that misconception that this is only a wealthy person's game. It's not. It's for everybody.
That's right, Jeremy. And it's awesome. Like, Michael's talked about how he felt blind. He was feeling around the dark, didn't know where to go. And then he could see. Like, that's how he described the feeling. Now he described, like, hey, now I see opportunities and I want to share with others. It's taken you and made you feel like I can be more present in my life. I can enjoy my life more. And and I heard a lot of faith, a lot of belief in your language and what you're talking about going forward. So I'm just curious, like, what is your big vision? If it all, like, it's not Fun Friday yet, so I don't have a magic wand, but if I could give you a magic wand or a crystal ball and you looked into it, tell Jeremy and I, tell the listeners, where is Michael going to be in 10, 20, 30 years from now? Like, what's that big vision look like for you?
I would like to completely escape the banks. Completely. I mean, if there's a way to completely escape the banks. Right now, my rule is only 1 month of personal expenses stays in the bank accounts. The rest of it goes to the policy. And in that way, I know that I'm always avoiding this, the traditional banks. The thing I'd like to be able to do in 10 years is I've studied, since I've discovered this concept, and of course, this is assuming that we're using a whole life, especially design whole life. I've studied, as time goes on, the more and more you put to base, obviously the more you can pump in over the long haul. And so that's the long-term mindset. So short term, it's, okay, I'm trying to solve some problems in the short term. It's capital to be able to invest and grow and produce and, provide for myself and others. And then in the long haul, it's, okay, let's completely escape the bank. Let's completely eliminate that as a need, completely. And so my vision is I'll completely eliminate having to put even a single dollar in there, but maybe not a reality. But
well, it's incredible. Well, I think the audience wants to know, where's Michael going to go? We hear you escaping, the slavery of the banking system, the financial system. But they want to know where your heart's taking you. Where you talk about family, like, where are you going to be? Where's your business? What are you doing? Like, what do you see yourself having to learn other than seceding from the banks, which we love? But
also in while I'm doing that, I would love to have a family. I'd love to raise some kids of my own. I would love to build businesses that I see purpose, and it's not just about money. But, I'm starting a business because it's like I'm passionate about this problem that exists in the world, and I want to solve it. And I think I have the ability to do so. And money is just not, I don't have to worry about, okay, do I have enough money to potentially hire the people I need or implement the systems, etc. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of problems to solve. And it would be cool to feel like instead of working for dollars, I'm working for a purpose, an end goal that's actually improving society at large. And I think that's in 10 years, I'd like to be doing that exclusively. I'd like to just be working on, the things that I'm passionate about, if that makes sense. That would be my 10-year vision.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. As we start to wrap up here, what advice would you give to listeners who are considering the IBC journey, or those who might just be discovering it today? What advice would you give them?
I pondered this before I got on here with you guys, and one of the things that helped me to conceptualize, like I went to school for engineering, and in engineering, we learned to conceptualize things first, and then we could apply a mathematical model to it second to then produce the desired outcome. So you go from problem to concept to quantifying, what needs to happen in order to bring to fruition the solution to this problem. And you can do it with relative precision. Once you've conceptualized it, you've applied a mathematical model, and then you've landed at okay, this is what we want to get out of this. And then, of course, along the way, you test and iterate to find out what nuances and, let's say, parameters you want to, or tolerances you want to apply to it. And so with this way of thinking, this is how I actually landed on, does this IBC concept work for me? Being in real estate, I was able to conceptualize a mortgage. So like, let's say a home mortgage. Let's say I put 10% down on a home mortgage. And let's say, I invest a lump sum of cash. And, I thought about equity growth. Like, I'm looking for a tool that helps me to store my hard-earned economic energy as dollars. Is this going to work for me? Well, you can conceptualize it by looking at, let's say, a traditional home mortgage and how the equity grows in your house. On day one, you have nothing. Even if you do 10% down, you're still going to have to pay closing costs if you sell. You're still going to have to pay the agent if you list it with an agent. There's costs associated with selling. So you're at zero on day one. But if you maintain the house, you pay the fees, the taxes, the utilities, all that. You can see how over time, this house, assuming it's a personal residence, can actually be conceptualized as sort of a bank account that accumulates value over time, that is pretty solid. It holds a relatively good amount of value for the individual who holds it, and you can actually use it to invest. I would say that whatever it is that you're doing in your life, and especially with IBC, conceptualize it as an equity storage vehicle that will grow tax-free. It's, it'll provide for your family long term, and just think about where you're trying to get to, and how would the equity growth in something like infinite banking, implementing this process diligently and consistently, and then seeing this grow over time, how would that potentially get you to where you want to be? And so Jason did a great job designing the policy for me. It's going to work really well over the long haul. And, that would be my advice. My advice is, try to think about, what you're trying to do in a term that you can understand. For me, it was real estate. Maybe it's something else for somebody else, but I think that's the best advice I think I can give.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love that, Michael. And thank you for being, so engineers, you guys are, like you said, you have to conceptualize it. You have to add the math to it. You have to do all the numbers and try to poke holes in it. And you and Jeremy are the same that way, right? Like, guys want to poke holes and prove things. But what you just said is make sure that you have an idea that you want to achieve or a problem you're trying to solve, and then think through it in a way where you understand that, hey, this is going to gain value whether I want it to or not, as long as I treat it properly. It's going to be advantaged in a lot of ways, and it's going to also provide for the future of my family. So I'm going to solve my problem in a more optimal way, but I want to, just make it simple. Make it as simple as you need to, because all you're changing is one thing. Where does your surplus money or your savings go first? That's all we changed. Like, I wasn't some magic, I didn't like come in some magic person. I was like, no, Michael, you're just going to do this instead of what you're doing right now. And then here you are a couple of years later where you didn't need to file for bankruptcy, right? You took the path to really own your debts and really to pay them back. And now you're growing your business and you have opportunities. You're lending to yourself. You realize, hey, I am my most valuable asset. I'm going to lend to my business, and I'm going to keep that interest in my business. And I'm going to scale towards a future where you find a beautiful wife, amazing kids, and now you have a mission that you're impacting the world with something that you care about. So It's awesome stuff.
Yes, sir.
Michael, before we close out, do you have any closing remarks, anything else? Anything that we should have asked that you want to share?
I can't think of anything, but yeah, I would just say that this is a powerful, powerful concept that I think I'm just really appreciative of you guys. I'm honored to be here with you, and I think I tell as many people as I can about it. And, I've sent some folks Jason's way, but I would encourage everyone who may be watching this to give this a shot, like to actually really look into it and think about it, because it has so many benefits for such a wide variety of folks. And, and the discipline that the mindset shift and the discipline that's required to implement and successfully utilize. I think it's good for anybody.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here today.
And we love having you here, Michael. It's great to have you on this episode with us. And I know that the audience really appreciates your vulnerability, your courage to be here, because I know it's not easy for you, right? This is something we're getting you out there doing your own podcast with real estate and different things. You and Jeremy can probably connect up on some of that. But I want to hear about how your journey's going maybe later on. But it was a blessing to have you here. So thank you for being here. We're really, really grateful.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Jason.
Have a good day.
All right, all. Have a good one. Till next time.